And it was strange because everyone there.
That's fine. So, Fuensada, would you like to?
Yes, the introduction. Well, welcome everyone to this second webinar organized by the cluster formed by the three sister projects, UPLIFT, Preserve, and UPPET. The three, the three projects funded under the Horizon 2020 program, Industrial Leadership in Enabling and Industrial Technology, Biotechnology, and under the topic Upcycling Bioplastic of Food and Drink Packaging. Standard and certification are an important tool to facilitate the implementation of a sustainable use of resources and energy while protecting consumers, workers, and environment. That's why the European Commission wants a standardization and certification activity to become to be included in the research and innovation project proposals. In this webinar, we are going to address the topic of standardization of plastic and circular economy, how standardization can support the transition towards a circular use of plastics, and how the research and innovation European projects can work in the framework of standardization. To this end, we count on the participation of 5 speakers, experts in this field. We greatly appreciate the collaboration in making this webinar possible. And we also thank all of you for attending this event and invite you to participate in the final session, when we can bring up any issue regarding this topic to be discussed with the experts. And now I give the floor to Angela Gaetani, who is in charge of communication, networking, and clustering in the project UPPET, and will be the moderator of this webinar.
Thank you, Fuensanta. I'm going to present briefly the agenda for today. As a first speaker, we will have Susana Xará, who's a project advisor in the European Commission for Raw Materials at Health and Digital Executive Agency. She's going to talk about sustainable packaging, research trends, and innovation. Then Alberto Barranca from AIMPLAS, who is actually partner in the UPLIFT project, will talk about the standardization of the UPLIFT technology. At 12 o'clock, sorry, we will have a break, a coffee break, and then we will have another presentation from Christian Schulz and Christina Bloch on the role of certification in a bio-based and circular economy. Following Christian's and Christina's presentation, Hera Araguzo-Riviera from UNE, in the UPPET project, will talk about the fast-track standards, the CEN-CENELEC Workshop Agreements. Last but not least, Kristin Geidermark-Olofsson from Circular Plastic Alliance will talk about the challenges of standardization in a circular economy. There is going to be a Q&A section following each presentation, and in the end, we will have a final discussion, like an open discussion, about the importance of standardization in a circular economy. So briefly, in terms of moderating the webinar today, I'm presenting the moderator. So Fuensanta Monzo, who's the project coordinator in the UPPET project. She works for CETEC, and she has more than 30 years of experience in charge of the laboratory, quality assurance, and research and development processes. Myself, as Fuensanta mentioned earlier, I'm the communications manager within the UPPET project. I've been working for more than 20 years in implementing and managing EU-funded projects. And today I'm the moderator of the webinar together with Gwen Santa and Pablo Morales. Pablo is the communications manager at Sustainable Innovations, as well as the dissemination and communication manager within the UPLIFT project. He has a solid background in the field of corporate communication, as well as branding, strategy, and videography. Today, he will be leading the Q&A section at the end of each presentation, and he will be addressing your questions to the speakers. We strongly encourage you to ask and use the chat feature. In terms of our speakers today, let me introduce you to Susana Xará, who, as I said, is a project advisor at HaDEA in the raw material sector of the industry unit. Before joining the European institutions in 2017, Susana worked as a professor, researcher, and coordinator of technical and scientific services. Her main scientific expertise relates to chemical and environmental engineering, particularly in technologies for environmental protection, waste treatment technologies and management, life cycle assessment, and packaging. Alberto Barranca. Alberto is an R&D technician in the chemical recycling department in AIMPLAS, which is the Technological Institute of Plastic in Valencia. He is a biotechnologist. Christian Sood is he works for he's studying technology and renewable resources, and worked from 2011 to 2019 as a research associate at the Institute for Bioplastics and Biocomposites in various third-party funded projects. He works for the European he works for European project activities at European Bioplastics. He's going to present together with Christina Bloch the standardization in Preserve, the project. Christina works for Dean Septo, TUV Rhineland for 3 years as a product manager in the environmental field. Her many areas are biodegradable, bio-based, and recyclable certifications, as well as sustainable biomass certifications. Then we will have a presentation from Henar Araguzo Riviera, who is a project manager at UNE. UNE is the Spanish Association for Standardization. UNE is a partner in the UPPET project and has a leading role in standardization activities. Last but not least, Christine Geidenmark is the Director for Regulatory Affairs and Strategic Innovation in Trio World Group. She has more than 35 years of experience in the polymer industry, including plastic, rubber, and textiles, and all combinations thereof. She's mostly been working with product and process development, but also within key account production and process management. She's representing the Circular Plastic Alliance today. So these are our speakers for today. In terms of our webinar, we can inform you that the session is being recorded. You will be able to have a look at it in YouTube video afterwards. Please make sure for audio purposes that your microphone is muted so that we won't have any noises in the background. And we strongly encourage you to use the chat function of the Zoom platform to raise your questions for each presenter. You will have the opportunity to raise your questions following each presentation and at the end in the open discussion that we will have. Now we'll give the floor to Susana to do her own presentation. I'm stopped sharing my screen, so I will ask Susana to share hers.
Is everything okay with my presentation?
Yes, we can. If you use the presentation function, yes.
Yes. So Do you see the slides only, or you see also the next slide? Because I have 3 screens, I don't know exactly what you see.
We can see the first slide.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much to the organizers, first of all, and to the moderators of this event. It is an honor, and I'm very proud of being the project advisor of one of the projects that is organizing this event. And I agreed to have a short talk about HaDEA, about some of the projects on plastics and on packaging that are granted by us, and then to mention the use of life cycle assessment in these projects, and also to mention the research trends and innovation that we have noticed in our projects, so in the projects granted by us. Starting by HaDEA, so we are one of the executive agencies of the European Commission, and we are in charge of managing programs and initiatives on behalf of the Commission. And we work very closely to our parent DGs, particularly to DG Grow in terms of raw materials, DG RTD in terms of research, and then DG Connect, DEFIS, and Santé for the other subjects. So we are mainly focuses on addressing the European Commission's ambition to help the rebuilt and post-COVID-19 Europe, making it greener, more digital, and more resilient, and also better fit for the current and for the forthcoming challenges. We are in charge of these programs that are listed on this slide. So the most important one for this event is the last one, the Horizon Europe, the Pillar 2 Cluster 4, Digital Industry and Space, with a very significant budget. And of course, we also have the legacy from Horizon 2020 program, so the previous research and innovation program of the European Commission. We are in charge of the different phases of the life cycle of the projects, starting from the evaluation of proposals, then selecting the best proposals to be funded by us, by the European Union. Then we prepare the grant agreements that are in summary, they are the contracts that we establish with the different consortia. Then we start the monitoring of the projects during the implementation of each action. We work very closely to each consortium, and we support them in the implementation of the project. And at the end, but sometimes also during the implementation of the action, we also contribute to the exploitation and dissemination of the project results, giving feedback to the policymakers. And this event is very useful, particularly for this last step of the project's life cycle. I did, together with my colleagues, we did a compilation of the most relevant projects related to plastic and to packaging, so not only on packaging, but for plastics in general, because we considered, after an internal discussion, that these projects might be interesting for you, not only for clustering, but also to get some inspiration for some of your actions. And as several deliverables are public, for example, in our database Cordis, you can get them and you can have a lot of information about each of these projects that I'm going to present very quickly. So we identified a group of projects that were funded under the topic CE-Spire 10-2018, entitled Efficient Recycling Processes for Plastic Containing Materials. All these projects are innovation actions. And the first one that I want to mention is this MMA2, second generation methyl methacrylate. tetrahydrate, and it is the main objective is to construct a novel and fast-growing PMMA recycling value chain using the depolymerization and recovery of monomer grades sold at 90% of virgin MMA price. So this is a very interesting project that will finish in September 2022. Another project from this topic is the AIMPLAS, is integrated catalytic recycling of plastic residues into added value chemicals. And this project will finish also this year in October. And it addresses the cost and energy efficient recycling of large fractions of today's non-recyclable plastics and composites from urban waste. So probably in this one, because it also addresses the reduction of the carbon footprint, this one will also have very interesting information for your cluster and for your activities in general. Another project from the same topic is ISOPREP, ionic solvent-based recycling of polypropylene products. And in this project, the objective, it will finish also this year in September. And the method is proposed for recycling polypropylene products into virgin quality polypropylene. So then the use of this, the reuse of this material is also tested in this project, and several pilot plants were established, but in this one particularly for the recycling of polypropylene for carpets. Another project from this call as well, this topic, this one is multi-cycle, and this is very specific for packaging, and it is an advanced and sustainable recycling process and value chains for plastic-based multi-materials. And the objective was to deliver an industrial recycling pilot plant for thermoplastic base, which allows recovering pure plastics in mixed wastes, but also fibers without downgrading. So very important advance in the current status of the technologies. And one of the demonstrators is exactly the development of the multi-layer packaging, but also flexible films that cannot be recycled cost effectively to date, and altogether account for around 50% of plastic packaging. There is other applications, and this project ends also this year. Another project, I think it is the last one from this call. It is PolyInspire, demonstration and innovative technologies towards a more efficient and sustainable plastic recycling. I have someone trying to enter the room. So this project will finish next year, 2023. And the main objective is to demonstrate a set of innovative, cost-effective and sustainable solutions, aiming at improving the energy and resource efficiency of post-consumer and post-industrial plastics recycling processes, targeting 100% waste streams containing at least 80% of plastic materials. So, and then three innovation pillars are addressed that you can then check with more detail in our database of the projects, as I mentioned. There is another project that might be very interesting for you that was recommended by my colleagues to mention here. That is from another call, from the Biotech 6/2017, optimization of biocatalysis and downstream processing for the sustainable production of high value added platform chemicals. This project will finish also this year and will develop, based on an integrated biocatalytic production technology, a radically new value chain for the utilization of surplus sucrose from sugar beet biomass in the European Union. So it is more related to bioproducts that I will mention after that in the trends. And the last but not the least, because this is one of the projects that I have in my portfolio that I really appreciate a lot. It is touching very deeply the field of plastic packaging. Is Flex Function to Sustain. It is an open innovation ecosystem for sustainable nano-functionalized flexible plastic and paper surfaces and membranes. This project is an open innovation test bed, as it is indicated in the name of the topic. It will finish only in March 2024, so we still have some time to go. And it is a different project than the projects that I mentioned before, because being an open innovation test bed, it means that all the consortium, they will establish a kind of a network, an association of the different participants. They were funded to upgrade the several pilot lines that they have, and some of them were not only upgraded but constructed. They will provide through an entity, a legal entity that will function as a single entry point. They will provide services to the society. So this means that this consortium will create this single entry point, an independent entity that will commercialize the services that are provided by the different members of the consortium. So in case that an SME wants, or a startup wants to develop a new product or to test a system in this field, they can contact this single entry point of this project. They can check the catalog of services that is already available, even if the project started only in 2020. They have already a catalog of services that includes everything that the different beneficiaries can provide to this SME or to this startup through this single entry point. And altogether, with the support of the single entry point, they establish a work program for this process, or for this product that the SME or the startup wants to develop, and with the contribution of different partners that will be identified among the beneficiaries of the consortium, they will develop for the startup or for the SME the process or product that they want to develop. So it is a very interesting concept. These projects are different than the others because they need to be sustainable after the end of the project. And for example, in HaDEA, in the unit where I belong, we have 25 open innovation test beds in different subjects. This one is the only one more linked to packaging and to plastic. That's why I'm presenting it here. But as demonstrators of these projects, apart from the demonstrators that were already identified during the proposal, they are open to receive and to accept applications from the other external SMEs and startups. So if you pay attention to the social media and even to the sites of these open innovation test beds, you will find different open calls that in case that you work for SME or startup, you can apply. And you can have, with the funding of the project, so funded by the European Union, you can have your product or your process tested during the duration of this project, and having a benefit of this funding. And it is a very interesting concept that I really invite you to have a look and to participate. And in case that you need more information, of course, you can contact us. Now moving to the use of LCA, what I have seen in terms of the use of LCA in our projects on plastics and also on packaging is that LCA is used as expected in most of the projects, if not in all, to compare the current or existing systems with the new systems that are being developed in the project. This is, of course, the most relevant use of LCA in our projects, as I said. It is also useful to identify the step of the life cycle with the highest potential environmental impact. So, doing so, you can identify which part of the life cycle is more important to address in the future research work. For example, if it is, in case of the raw materials particularly, this is very important. If it is the extraction of the material, the processing, transport of some components and so on, and the waste phase. So it is very important, instead of saying we are going to decrease the carbon footprint of this system, it is better that you start by identifying which step of the life cycle is the highest contributor to the potential, to the environmental impact, and then to address that step in your research. Another very important use of life cycle assessment is, for example, in a complex system, as a packaging system or other systems, even more complex, is to identify the component of that system with the highest potential environmental impact. So imagine that you have a packaging system with different components, including a label, including a secondary packaging, including a cap, for example, and you want to decrease the environmental impact of that packaging. Of course, the first step is to identify which is the component with the highest environmental impact, because in principle it will be the one to be addressed in the first place to decrease the environmental impact of the system of the packaging. It is also very important to mention that in several of our projects, the life cycle assessment, traditional environmental impact assessment, is complemented by the life cycle costing, because of course the cost is very important in the decision making process, and also the social life cycle assessment, so impacts in terms of social categories. Of course, LCA as well as LCC and social LCA are only contributors to the decision making. So the decision makers cannot only rely on the results of these kind of studies. They are good contributors for a decision, but not the only ones. In terms of research trends and innovation, so we identified, even with the contact to some of the projects that we are working with, several trends in the research and in innovation, and also some challenges. And the first one that is not new for you, for sure, is the replacement of the traditional fossil fuel materials by novel materials from renewable resources. But of course, we know that in general, the end users and the consumers, they appreciate eco-friendly products, including packaging, of course, but most of them are not willing to pay more for these products. So the price still plays a very important role in the decision of the end users and consumers. And additionally to that, it's important to highlight that materials from biosources not always result in eco-friendly products. So it is not enough to say that we are using renewable resources, we are using the biosources, we are using the biomaterials and so on. It is important to show, for example, with the use of life cycle assessment, that these materials, in fact, they produce products and other materials that they are better in terms of environmental impact. Then another challenge that we identified is the prices of plastics from fossil sources that is rapidly increasing, And so, of course, the market, the industry is looking for alternatives to compensate this increase on the price of plastics. Additionally, also related to the market, there is a competitive advantage of a large growing packaging industry from Southeast Asia. And of course, our industry and the market in general is also concerned with that. And we need to advance to overcome this advantage of these Southeast Asian markets. Another trend in this case, and also innovation, is the bio, and also related to challenges, of course, these bioplastics and paper-based packaging that we see appearing in the market and in our research projects. They do not always provide the desired shelf life of the products. And so there is still some research to be done in order to make them competitive towards the traditional materials. So they might be good in case that they are in terms of environmental impact, but sometimes they don't provide desired shelf life. And so we still need some research in that field. A challenge that was identified by some industries is the fact that these novel materials, they require upgrade and updated processing machines. So in order to use the machines that were used for traditional materials in the new ones, they need a significant investment to adapt and to upgrade those machines. Additionally, we noticed that for some materials, they are very good. They are, in terms of environmental impact, they are exceptional. However, they only exist at the laboratory scale or in small quantities and at a very high price. So there is still a need of industrial upscaling in some cases, and the cost optimization of those materials to be accepted, for them to be accepted in the market. Another point that is very important, particularly for you that are working on standardization, that is the main subject of this webinar, is the clarification of the possible misuse of the concepts such as compostability and biodegradability, despite having existing already some rules and definitions and a lot of technical documents on this. We noticed that in some sectors and in some industries is still very confusing, the use of these terms similar to this and also these two terms. Last but not least, so we should conclude that it is important, the sustainable material sourcing and the responsible consumption, that the entire life cycle must be considered and assessed. And as a conclusion, we can say that we should use as little as possible, but as much as needed, as I mentioned, for example, for the case of the materials that do not provide yet the desired shelf life of the products. So this is the end of my talk. I would like to present you also my colleagues that are in charge of some of the projects that I mentioned here, and to also show you the information about the social media that that you can use to follow our activities. This is in general for the Commission, so I will replace this one by that one that is includes also the contacts of the HaDEA and also some of the contacts of the European Commission. So I will delete the previous slide that is here by mistake. I thank you very much for your attention, and I am available for questions I'm not sure if I will stay until the end of the event, but I will try at least to address some of your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Susana. Pablo, I'm not sure if there are any comments, thoughts, or any questions for Susana in the chat.
There is no actually questions, but if you have any question, please feel free to use the chat so we can address your question to Susana or to the rest of the speaker.
Okay, thank you. So we will give the floor to Alberto Barranca then to present the standardization of the UPLIFT technology. Alberto, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Angela. I'm going to share my screen.
Actually, there is one question that just came up. I don't know, Susan, if you want to quickly answer to this question. Let me read it for you. As reuse is very important for circular economy and higher in the European Union waste hierarchy than recycling, do you have project example on plastic reuse?
Yes, we have several projects addressing the reuse of plastics. Probably not so many as the projects that are addressing the recycling. You can have a quick search in our database on cordish.eu. In case that there is any project that you want to have more information about, please contact me or one of my colleagues that are listed in the last slide of contacts. But anyway, in that database, you have a lot of deliverables produced by each of the projects. But there are projects addressing the reuse of packaging and plastics, and probably some not granted by us, by HaDEA, because we are a new agency started last year, but probably some of the others are in other agencies and other parts of the European Commission.
Okay, thank you. That was the only question. So sorry to interrupt you, Alberto. Go ahead.
Don't worry. So I'm going to share. Okay. Can you hear me okay and watch properly the screen?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. So thank you very much, Angela, for the presentation and also for the organization of this workshop. So my name is Alberto Barranca, and I'm going to try to give to you the main key points of the standardization of the UPLIFT technology. So in this slide is present the main part of the presentation. The first part is going to be the introduction of the main aspect to the UPLIFT technology. Also, I'm going to try to give to you the context of the standardization in UPLIFT technology, and also give to you the main keys about the first step that we are developing in this sense. From the context, I'm going to try to identify the main gaps in the standardization and try to define some main challenge in the field of the standardization of the UPLIFT technology. And to conclude the presentation, I'm going to propose the possible UPLIFT roadmap to solve the main challenge and the gaps that we are going to discuss in previous section. This roadmap is going to be divided into three main actions. The first one, collect the interest from the industrial field, and also the development of the workshop agreement. So I'm going to start. Well, the impulse or the background of this project is the circular economy approach that is very different shared in the European level. And one of the tools or the strategy to reach this circular economy approach is a chemical recycling. I want to talk in this forum about the complementarity between the chemical recycling and the traditional mechanical recycling, because the chemical recycling is not a competence of the mechanical recycling. Chemical recycling try to work with materials that the traditional strategies cannot, to reach a circular economy approach in the plastic sector in particular. The chemical recycling is divided into three main strategies. The first one, and two strategies based on the use of solvent, the solvolysis and the physical recycling. The first one use a solvent to break the hydrocarbon chains. And in the second one, in the physical recycling, the solvent is used to extract the entire polymer chains from a specific matrix. The second route, the second chemical recycling route, is the thermal cracking. In this case, is used a high temperature to break the hydrocarbon chains, and is composed by two main strategies. The first one is the pyrolysis. In this case, the breakness is developed in a inert atmosphere, and in the second case, in the gasification, the breakness is developed in an oxygen atmosphere. But in this case, in the UPLIFT technology, is very important the third strategy, that is the biological recycling. The biological recycling employ a microorganism or a part of a microorganism, for example, enzymes, for degrade the polymers to obtain shorter polymer or another substance of interest in different industrial fields. So with this small theoretical base and explaining the background, in this slide is presented with the scheme the main objective of the UPLIFT technology, that is the polymerization, degradation of waste from the food and drink packaging by different microorganisms, with the objective to obtain ecopolymers, and with the appropriate formulation, try to obtain ecopolymers. So this project is high involved in not only in a circular economy approach, but also in a biorefinery approach that should be the final point of this technology. So, taking into account the general overview of the UPLIFT technology, okay, I'm going to explain the current context of standardization close to this project. And I want, with this slide, I want to highlight the lack of regulations related not only in biological recycling, but also in the chemical recycling, okay? So I think that it's very important to remark the documents that are represented in this slides, because they are documents that work in the chemical recycling field, not in biological field, but also they are not official or final documents. They are a proposal. They are in the way to be or to become in a final standard. So with this slide, I want to highlight that currently the Standards Association are working in the final documents of a standard devoted to the chemical and biological recycling. Also, apart from general documents, okay, I think that in this project it's very important to take into account three main fields. Take into account the objective I have explained in the first part. The first one is the food and drink packaging, the standard about this field. Also, the standard related to the chain of custody and eco-labeling, and the standard related to the bioproducts and biomaterials. These three fields are part of the initial methodology of standardization. We are working in the UPLIFT technology. We are in the initial step, and we are now currently identifying the main gaps. So taking into account these three main fields and the lacks of regulation and legislation about the chemical recycling in general, biological recycling, we have developed a different questionnaire, not to not only know the Spanish context that we know, but also the standard context of this field, very important for the UPLIFT technology in other countries. We are working in this step, and currently we have some results. For example, from a stakeholder from Croatia, Denmark, or Austria. So we are now working in the standardization, and what we have in a European level in standardization and legislation about topics or fields very important in the UPLIFT technology. As I have explained, eco-labeling, traceability, mass balance, and change of custody, or change of custody. But taking into account that currently in a legal framework or in a standardization framework, the chemical recycling and biological recycling definition, for example, is not clarified. So this aspect that I have discussed, I think that it is one of the main challenges in the field of standardization of the UPLIFT technology. As I have told to you, a clarification of basic theoretical aspects. For example, define a specific definition of the biological, microbiological, or enzymatic recycling to take into account the limits of this kind or of this way or of chemical recycling. And also, I think that the standardization should cover or should work in the distinction, in a specific distinction between chemical and biological recycling. Also, I think that one of the main challenges is the national government support in this field, and also the industrial support, the long terms that involve the development of a normative legal framework or documents, and also the support in a European context, the support from 5 European countries to involve to work or to initiate standardization. Okay, but also I want to remark the importance of the coordination in the standardization context. Okay, the coordination with the legislative action, and I think that this legislative action is very close to one of the challenges, that is the national government support. So I'm going to highlight two cases of, for example, of coordination. Okay, one of these is the determination of the minimum recycling content, and also the tax deduction. Okay, so I'm going to explain the Spanish chemical recycling case. Okay, so related to the legislative action to remark this coordination with the standardization and the legislative framework, I'm going to highlight the directive that is represented in the screen. In this directive, is mandatory from 2025 that the recycled PET content of at least 25% in bottles of less than 3 liters. But not also in this directive plan this objective. Also from 2030, the recycled plastic fraction, not only PET, I want to remark this case for all polymers, in this kind of object of materials should be 30%. So, in my opinion, the objectives are very ambitious, and I in favor of this. But we have to take into account in this directive is not represented what kind of recycling technology. I think that in this question could be asked by chemical recycling, for example, and biological recycling. So I think that taking into account this kind of legal documents, I think that biological recycling could be one of the alternatives to take into account and to achieve these two objectives I have explained. But also, it's not specified how recycling content in the final product is going to be measured. So I think that to achieve this kind of this objective, okay, I think that it's very important promoting a standard close to not only the traditional recycling, but also the chemical and biological recycling. And I think that this kind of directive impulse to fill the gaps I told to you in the last slide, the absence or the lack of normative in the chemical and in the biological recycling context. I'm going also to explain the Spanish chemical recycling case in tax deduction, because in the law you can watch in the screen. Okay, the chemical recycling is specified as an alternative to the tax deduction of 0.45 euros per kilogram of plastic not recycled. So in the tax for in the final product for the fraction of plastic not recycled is the number you can watch in the screen, impulsing or in favor of the recycled plastic fraction in the final product. So also in this case, the chemical in general, and in particular the biological recycling could be alternative to achieve objectives for avoid achieve the tax deduction. So I think that currently the legislation context is in favor of promote the chemical and also the biological recycling standardization. And I wanted to, with the explanation of the last two cases, I wanted to remark the importance of the complementarity among the legislation framework and the standardization framework. Also, and to finish the part of challenges, I want to remark the European Commission support in circular economy topics. And I think that in comparison or with a global level is really, really high. So I think it's very important to remark this aspect. Well, the last part of this presentation, and take into account all information I have shared with you, I think that not only the UPLIFT roadmap, also project similar, okay, with similar technologies, could be composed by 3 main actions. The first one is the communication with the companies, the industrial network. I think it's very important to identify current status of the different companies devoted to the chemical and biological recycling field. The communication is very important to talk this aspect in the specific committees of standardization. Okay, and I think that it could be the second action that is involved and initiate the work of the different committees to try to work in final documents of standardization in the chemical recycling and in the biological recycling way, and try to supply the lack of regulation that I talked to you before. And the last action, and I think that is going to be one of the topic of one of the presentations in this workshop, is the workshop agreement, because this kind of document has a particular characteristic, and is that are very fast and flexible. So for a European project with a strict temporal limit, okay, or a time limit, I think that is an appropriate option for in the standardization strategy. So I'm going to remark some points, okay, of the actions I have planned, and I think I want to remark in this case the role of AIMPLAS in the standardization of the UPLIFT technology, because AIMPLAS belong to different committees in topics very close to the UPLIFT technology. For example, in recycling materials, plastics and rubber, circular economy, packaging, plastic recycling, bio-based and biodegradable plastics, mechanical and chemical recycling, or rigid plastic packages. So the role of AIMPLAS is the communication and work, not only communication, also work, in try to supply the absence of normative documents in the field of chemical and biological recycling. For example, it could be an interesting starting point to define a specific definition or clarification of the biological recycling and limits the aspect of the biological recycling in a standard document. Okay. Also, I want to highlight that AIMPLAS is member of the Spanish Association for Standardization. So I think that for the UPLIFT technology, it will be very interesting this status of AIMPLAS in the different committees. And finally, I'm going to give to you the main keys of the workshop agreements as a solution for achieve the final objective of the standardization of the project, to achieve this. So we have two main alternatives. The first one, the CWA, that are workshops in a European level, okay, and the IWA that are workshop in an international from an international point of view. So now, very briefly, I'm going to explain the main characteristics of these possible solutions or alternatives to achieve this standardization. Well, the definition for the CWA, the Workshop Agreement in a European level, is a deliverable developed and agreed by the participant and in a temporary working group. Okay, working group in the European institution devoted to this to work in this aspect. Well, these documents are not European or no that doesn't hasn't got an European standard status. Also, if it will be a conflict with an official standard, European standard, okay, this kind of document, this kind of workshop shall be withdrawn. I think that these two aspects has to be taken into account. There is no geographical limit and are documents, and it is very important in the context of the this project, are very fast and flexible. On average, 10 to 12 months. In this slide is represented the main stages to achieve this the final document. The final workshop agreement is very similar to other standard document. Okay, the first stage it is very summarized, setting the secretariat, the second stage make the proposal form, and the third stage the consultation, different consultation, and the final publication. I'm now going to deep in this. I think that for the objective of this presentation, it's enough, this information. And now I'm going to finish with the presentation of the workshop in a global level, okay? And IWA is an ISO document produced through a workshop meeting rather than the full ISO technical committee process. So this aspect make that also this kind of document are very fast as the CWA, and related to the limit, time limit, is very similar to a workshop in a European level, and the steps are very similar, okay, than in comparison with an European workshop agreement. So I'm going to sum up to finish this presentation. I'm going to highlight some conclusions. The first one, that in the first step that have been developing in the standardization of the UPLIFT technology in the European level, existence of there is an existence of legislation and regulation focused on aspects very important in the context of the project, such as the food and drink packaging, chain of custody, and eco-labeling, and also bioproducts and biomaterials. In my opinion, I think that we have to try to define the biological recycling, conceptual clarification in a legal and standard, and also in a standard framework. I think that it will be very necessary in the context of the project. Also, as I have told to you in the first part of the presentation, there is a lack of legal and regulatory support for biological recycling. The biological recycling is a novel alternative to recycling, so we have to try to cover or to fill this gap. Okay, so for a proper standardization of the technology, I think that it's very important to highlight the importance of coordination between legislation and regulations, and also to promote the communication of the regulatory committees with the industrial sector to impulse the work of the different committees in the work of the final documents. In a higher advanced degree, I think that it will be very interesting to include the biological recycling as a strategy to obtain minimum recycled content. And I want to highlight in this essence the mass balance approach, because the mass balance approach for not only the chemical recycling, also could be in the biological recycling, is an important tool to try to determine this minimum recycled content that could be mandatory for in the legal framework. And also, I want to highlight the different workshop agreements as alternative for standardization of the UPLIFT technology. So thank you very much. Please feel free to ask what you consider. Thank you.
Thank you, Alberto. I think there are quite there are a couple of questions for you, as I understand from the chat. Pablo?
Yes, Alberto, we have, as I know that we are a bit late with the agenda, Angela, I will read a few ones. And if we have more time at the end of the workshop, I can proceed to read the rest of the questions. The first question is the UPLIFT project also considering ISO 22095-2020 chain of custody, general terminology and models?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yes. Is the UPLIFT project also considering the ISO? The number of this ISO is 22095.
We are, yes, I understand now the question. We are working now in this aspect of consider, and we are studying the total legal and standard framework. So yes, I think that we are consider this ISO, but also I have to say that currently we are reviewing and we are modifying the first review. So I'm sure that I'm secure that we are taking into account this normative or standard document.
Okay, and I think, not sure if this is a question or more than a suggestion. It is if you are considering the ongoing work from the Joint Research Center that I think is located in Sevilla on the definition of recycling for the WFD review.
Is very similar to the answer of the previous question. Also, I have to say that we are working with the GRC in some project, and we are in permanent discussion with them in aspect related with mass balance and also a recycling aspect. So yes, we are taking into account this aspect. Okay.
Okay, there is more question, but I think, Angela, if you want maybe to start the break, and if we have more time,
yes, I would think so. So we will be able to address all the other questions after the break. So let's say 10 minutes instead of 15, as we are running a bit late. So 11:25, we will be together to continue the presentations. Yeah? So see you all in 10 minutes.
See you.
Great. See you.
Okay, so welcome back to our webinar. It's the turn of Christian Schulz and Christina Bloch now, who are going to talk about the role of certification in a bio-based and circular economy. Christian, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Angela, and hello, everyone. Also, warm welcome from my side. Today, I'd like to share a bit more information about how Preserve, as part of this clustering group of the H22 projects, is dealing with standardization, but also certification as a very applicable way on working things. And I just realized I did not share my screen with you. Just let me do that quickly so you can see what I'm talking about. I'm very sorry about this one. So I hope everything works now and you can see everything. Just trying to get everything arranged. Okay, yeah, just like I said, we will look quickly into standardization and certification in Preserve. And I'm not doing that alone. Today, we are happy to have support by Ms. Christina Bloch, actually from TÜV Rheinland-Dezertco, actually, who are helping us to get a bit more insight in how to make the standards applicable, actually. So to see also how this can be finding this its role in a bio-based and circular economy. And maybe just a quick jump into it on who actually we are as European Bioplastics and why we are working with the Preserve project. That's actually because our European Bioplastics is an industry association, but we have a very strong heart, so to say, for research and of course to develop and strive the plastic sector a bit further. So as you can see, really we are thinking about our bioeconomy strategy as a bioplastics life cycle model. So we have already been thinking in this way of circular modeling since the very early start of our association. As you can see here on the top left, we have almost 25 years of experience within bio-based plastics. And we have now around 70 members and we are working together with them on EU and member state level. We are also a network and networking hub. We're working together with several bioplastics organizations as part of Europe. And we are a founding member of the European Bioeconomy Alliance, the EUBA, and we hold our annual conference, the European Bioplastics Conference, which will take place by usually end of the year. This time it will be around Santa Claus Day, actually, 6th of December. And for our activities and services, I do not want to bore you with that, actually. You can find this on our website. But one thing that I just want to mention here, we are holder of the trademark, the Sibling mark that you can see on the bottom of the screen here. But this is something that Christina will show you a bit more detail in a minute. When I say who we are, actually, we are nothing without our networks. This is the same for European research projects, but this is also the same for industry associations as European Bioplastics. And as you can see here in a glimpse overview, our members cover the whole value chain when we talk about bio-based plastics. So from renewable raw materials up to the industrial end users, from the top left in green to the more purple in the bottom right, we try to have everybody on board, so to say, to make sure that our solutions are sustainable to the market, but also sustainable in a way that we fit into this circular economy model. And talking about working together, Actually, the Preserve project, just a glimpse overview on that one, is dealing like our two sister projects, UPLIFT and UPPET, dealing actually with the upcycling of bioplastics in the beverage sector, for example. But in this case, Preserve is actually dealing with tailored end-of-life solutions and upcycled secondary use. And we all know why we are doing this. Actually, we are thinking about the EU plastics strategy here and our targets that we want and need to reduce our carbon footprint. And this is, of course, nonetheless, and even more crucial also for packaging materials. So especially when we think about that, most of the plastic waste is not currently recycled at the moment. More than 2/3 are not recycled, at least not in Europe in that term. So when we think about Preserve as one of that key figures, thinking about also that we are a strong network together with our sibling projects, then we are a 4 years project running until December 2024. So we are now in our second year, and we are 26 partners around Europe. And as I mentioned, we are all part of this cluster with our two sibling projects on this upcycling plastics of food and drink packaging. And actually, just focusing on what we are dealing mainly here is on the left-hand side, the bio-based packaging for food and drinks, the solutions and demonstrators that we are going to develop and preserve. So, for example, snack pack, flow packs, or pulp molded packaging here on the left-hand side, but also different atmospheric packaging like film and tray for meat packaging. And afterwards, as a second life, so to say, as a secondary use out of the recycled materials, our aim is to develop demonstrators that are using these secondary raw materials to have some upcycling for cosmetic packaging, textiles, and composites, like you can see here on this sample pictures on the right-hand side. So, for example, also for a personal care injected jar on the bottom, but also personal care like wet wipes on the top right. And how do we want to reach this? This is actually the more technical activities that we want to do here. There are different layerings of coatings like protein-based coatings and adhesives. We're going to use PHA coatings, and for the surface treatment, actually we will use electronic beam, e-beam treatment of the bio-based polymers. And for the recycling, actually the delamination processes, we will make use of new and innovative enzyme by together actually on Preserve's roadmap, which is actually the innovative part. But of course, our core and key DNA at European Bioplastics is standardization, certification, and labeling, and this is exactly what we are going to bring in here. This is what we are trying also to deal with our other project and sibling project partners, that we are aligned in the different standardization committees that we are working with at DIN or CEN level. So as you can see here, I don't want to narrow it down into very deeply, but you can see here on the left-hand side, I narrowed a bit the different working groups on European level that we are working with at European Bioplastics, and where we are in exchange on the different parts of the projects, but also we are part of the international working groups, for example, here, like the ISO TC 61 in SC, and work group 2 for bio-based plastics, and working group 3 for biodegradable plastics. And this expands actually also on national level, for example, like in Germany on the DIN committees for biodegradable plastics and recycling materials. As an association, we support these independent third-party certification as well, to acknowledge standards. And as I mentioned, we own this seedling mark that you can see here on the lower half, that is actually awarded by the certifiers after working through the standardized certification schemes then to have the materials then being certified for that one. And last but not least, we are also monitoring and supporting the regulatory landscape on this level. When we think about in the middle of the slide, for example, for the European waste legislation, which is actually also core parts, and that which will have an influence, of course, an impact also on our project work, where we are actually in the review and where we should seek to encourage the use of bio-based feedstock for packaging as an equivalent also to recycled content. As you can see here, we are working with different parts here. And yeah, this is of course only a selection, but this is something that we will also give an input for this one. And as part of this standardization is of course needed to make this applicable, we need certification based on these standards. And this is even more crucial in a circular economy. And therefore, I'm very happy to now lead over to my colleague Christina Block from DINSERTCO, who will give us a bit more insight into her work at a certification body. So Christina, I'm not sure if you are already there.
I'm ready. Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Yes, right? Okay. Yeah. Thank you for the introduction and for the lead over. I will now give you a brief overview of DINSERTCO, what we do and where we come from and why we actually committed ourselves to certifications. You can already go to the next slide, please. Yeah. So we actually now committed ourselves for 50 years already to do certifications and conformity assessments. We started out in 1972 as a part of the German Institute for Standardization, the DIN. And in 2005, we fused with TÜV Rheinland, and actually now we are completely owned by TÜV Rheinland, but nevertheless, we are still in a very close connection with the German Institute for Standardization. There is a continuous exchange between us, and this is not just for fun, but because standardization and certification just go hand in hand. Usually it starts out that there is a demand either by some customers, or we just see it on the market, or even by producers, or sometimes even by governmental regulations. And then we start out that we start a standardization project together with the German Institute for Standardization, and in a group of experts, we develop, usually the first step, a pre-standard, DIN spec it is called, and then it becomes the full standard, the DIN standard. And based on this, we can then start the certification process, or to develop an actually certification. I will show you in the following slides why the certification is so important, or yeah, why this is so essential. You can go to the next slide, please. So we create confidence. This slide is to show you that we at DINSERTCO put quality and competence at our highest priority. We as a certification body have the service of a neutral conformity assessment. We always base our assessment on standards that can be DIN standards, or even European standards, or ISO standards, but also other public available specifications. For example, I will show you later. Also, we have this certification for recyclability, which is based on the minimum standard given by the German government. And to ensure our competence and our quality, we also hold several certifications and are actually accredited by the German Accreditation Institute. You can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So this pyramid kind of is the essential, shows you the importance of certification. Standards are always free, available to anybody who is willing to buy them. And they can be used freely. And also most slogans or most statements on products can actually be used freely and yeah, can be done by the manufacturer or suppliers. It's called production declarations. And it's tricky. I don't want to say it's always not true, but it's of course a certain interest of the manufacturer or supplier to put such labels on, and when they do it by themselves, it's simply not ensured that it is actually from a neutral perspective, and that tests and validations are independent and valid as they should be, especially if they refer to standards. It's simply not ensured that these standards are actually fulfilled completely. Only if you do a third-party certification, and this is what we do at HaDEA, you have a neutral party that actually is controlled by the Accreditation Institute and ensures that all requirements of a standard are actually fulfilled by this product or by the claim that is given for this product. We can go to the next slide. This shows you the certification scheme. Always when we develop a certification, it comes with a certification scheme. This is public, available. Everybody can see it for free. It's on our homepage, and it gives all criteria for the certification, and so it's really very transparent, so everybody can actually see when they see this label on a product, for example, industrial compostable, deemed approved, or the Sibling. It has a very similar certification scheme. Everybody can see what the certification is actually based on, which tests have been done, which standards this is according to, and it's nothing hidden or it's completely transparent to anybody and available. Go to the next slide, please. I will now come to a little overview of some of our certifications that we have in the environmental field. This gives you just a few pictures. You can already go to the next slide, please. So we kind of have certifications for the full life cycle of products, started by the certification of seed guard, where we actually certify the seedlings or the seed before it goes into the ground. Then we have the biomass certification for sustainable biomass, where we certify any biomass that actually will be used as fuel later on. We also have certification of wood agriculture. This is FSC and PFC, both of those, as well as the biomass certifications, REDSET and ICC, are certifications that we do for a different system giver. Then we certify products that are actually consist of those sustainable products, such as bio-based products. And then we come to the end of life section of a product. For example, the recycled content. This is also compared to bio-based products. So we also certify the recycled content, and then we have certifications for the end of life area of a product. For example, the biodegradability or the recyclability of products. Go to the next slide, please. The bio-based certification that we have is based on the standard ASTM D6866 or CEN 16137 or ISO 16602. These standards require an analysis of the C14 carbon Based on this, it is determined how much of the carbon of a product is actually not fossil, but from renewable resources. And this gives exactly the percentage for the certification. So this is a very easy to determine, quickly to proceed test. Additionally, we test the volatile solids to make sure that actually this product consists of organic constituents and it's not like a rock that you want to have certified for renewable resources, which would not make much sense. So it has to be at least 50% of organic content. Bio-based is just a different system giver. This testing is very similar. It's both certifications are accepted worldwide. Yeah, we can go to the next slide, please. Now we come to the industrial compostable certification. This one is based on the standard EN 13432. This includes several testings. It's not as easy as the one for bio-based certification, which shows that this is it's much more critical. We don't only test the biodegradability. Of course, this is a main part of the certification. So we make sure the product is actually biodegradable by microorganisms. But additionally, we also test the disintegration. So we actually do a pilot scale composting test where the product has to disintegrate within 12 weeks. And it has to be it's made sure that after 12 weeks, it's not visible anymore. The biodegradation might take a little bit longer, but it's ensured that it is not visible after 12 weeks anymore. And additionally, the biodegradation test shows that even after those 12 weeks, anything that might be left in like little particles will biodegrade by microorganisms. And those tests together actually ensure that there is no microplastics that are left over. Additionally to those biodegradation tests, we do tests to ensure that those products don't harm the environment. So we do a chemical characterization. There are really pretty strict limits for heavy metals and fluorine. So these are tested and cannot be exceeded. And we do a test with plants. So we actually take this compost that we produce in this disintegration test, in this pilot scale composting test, and grow plants on it. And those plants have to grow just as well as with pure compost without those samples in there. You can go to the next slide, please. So certification for home and garden composting is pretty similar to the one for industrial composting. The difference is that for industrial composting, products are actually made to decompose in those controlled industrial composting plants. So there is a controlled temperature and a controlled humidity, which is not always given in a home and garden composting behind your house, for example. So we have a very much lower temperatures, and the humidity varies. So those products are tested at other environmental characteristics. So the biodegradation is at lower temperature, and the disintegration test is at lower temperature. And but the same is that we do those tests for the environment. So we do the same chemical characterization, and we do the plant ecotoxicity test to make sure that also products for home composting do not harm the environment when they eventually end up in the compost and are used for fertilizers. Go to the next slide, please. This is also a similar certification, biodegradable soil, it is very important to consider that biodegradability is not equal to biodegradability. It always depends on the environment, where this product ends up, and what microorganisms are available in this environment. So if we have products biodegradable in soil, we have very different microorganisms, just because we also have much less humidity as, for example, in a compost. So this certification only refers to foils, mulching films that are put on fields to, for example, grow asparagus, which is the season right now, and is intended to only it is with a certain purpose, because we don't want to tell the customers, if you buy this product, you can just throw it into the environment, it degrades in the soil. So we don't want to support the production and throwaway kind of culture. We still want to support the permit for circular economy, with starting with reducing products and waste. So we do not offer this certification for any products, but only for certain areas where it actually makes sense, because those films are always used in the in those agricultural contents, and removing those foils is super difficult, and it cannot be excluded that parts of the films cannot be removed from the soil anymore, and to ensure that these rests that have to stay in the soil actually will degrade at some point. Go to the next slide, please. I come to our recyclable certification. This is quite new and is completely different to the certification for biodegradability. It actually is based on the minimum standard for determining the recyclability of packaging, subject to the system participation pursuant to section of the packaging legislative from Germany. It is very tricky in this field to give a general certification, because we do not only evaluate the theoretical possibility to recycle a product, but the actual recyclability of a product. And so it's also crucial that the customers are connected to some kind of collecting system. So this is the first pillar of the certification, that we check, is there a system that actually collects those products, and is there a system that actually separates those products and put those products into a recycling stream. Because if they are only selected, but afterwards in those recycling facilities, it's discarded as waste, because not because the technology is not ready, but because there's just no interest, because the prices are not good enough. Some streams are not recycled and are just discarded. So we don't count those as recyclable, even though theoretically they might be recyclable, of course. But it has to make sure that those actually go into a recycling stream, and afterwards they are being used again. So this is tricky, because this is very different from each country, and even from regions, if you just think about the connectivity of those people to a collection system. This is why at the moment it's only for Germany, and we are looking to add other countries as well. Go to the next slide, please. And this is the last certification I want to introduce you today. It's our recycled content certification. Again, very different from the other certifications, because here the basis is not some kind of test, but an audit. So we go to the manufacturer's production site and check what is their income of products, where is the production and what is actually the outcome, and do kind of a mass balance of those materials that go into this plant and the materials that go out, and with that determine the actually recycled content of the products. And come to the next slide. Yeah, thank you very much that I was able to present today. This slide gives you an overview of our website, where you can find all of our certifications. It's kind of like a Google search. You just give in a short word, and you will find all certifications related to this. So, thank you. If you have any questions, feel free. I'm happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Christina. I don't know if there are any questions for you. I will ask Pablo. Haven't seen anything in the chat.
Yes, we have a few questions. The first one says, in case of plant toxicity test, at what stage of growth are the plants that are being used in this test in? Is it from germination or post-germination?
It's post-germination. So we do a incubation of, I think it was like a week or 10 days. And then it's growing for 2 weeks. And it's always compared to a blank compost. So after 2 weeks of growing, we first determine how many seeds actually survived. And this is compared to the blank sample. And then we also determine the mass of those plants. So they don't only have to survive, but they also have to grow in the same quality as without the samples.
Okay, and then we have another question that says, which mass balance model is used for the last certification scheme?
It's the income and outcome. So they check during the at the production site how much recycled material goes into the production stream of this certain product and how much not recycled content, and then they calculate the final recycled content amount. But if you have more questions regarding this certification, I would rather refer to a colleague of mine, because I'm not the lead in there.
Okay, that was all the questions, Angela. I think we can move to the next block. You are muted, Angela.
Thanks, Pablo. Thank you very much, Christina and Christian, for the very insightful presentation. We're moving to the next one, which is about CEN and CENELEC Workshop Agreements, Fast Track Standards, from Henar Araguzo Rivera from UNE. Henar.
Hello. Screen. Okay. Can you see it?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So hello, everybody. Thank you for the invitation to participate in this webinar. This is Henar Araguzo from UNE, the Spanish Association for Standardization. We are a partner in UPPET project and contribute to it by providing knowledge and experience in standardization. We expect the project can take advantage of standardization benefits by, among others, helping the consortium to decide which project results have the potential to become new standards. And in this regard, we are going to explore an opportunity to contribute to standardization that is probably the best formula for this type of projects. It consists of the development of one or more fast-track standards, what we call CEN-CENELEC Workshop Agreements, or in short, CWAs, CWA. We will start providing some information, general information about UPPET project and about the standardization in the framework of European Horizon 2020 projects. And after that introduction, we will focus on the process to develop AQUA. This will be the central topic of this presentation. We start by giving a brief overview of UPPET project. Basically, the UPPET project aims at upcycling polyethylene and polyethylene terephthalate wastes by bioconversion into biodegradable bioplastics for food and drink packaging production. The main objective is to positively impact the food and drink packaging recycling rate and therefore to achieve the European Union expected results in this regard. Here you can see some data, general information of the project. UPPET is a 4-year project that has received funding from the European Union's Horizon 2020 Research and Innovation Program. And it has been developed under the coordination of CETEC and counts with the participation of 20 partners distributed within 10 different countries. We all know that the sustainable management of plastic waste has become a very challenging problem for global society. In fact, plastic packaging makes up nearly 60% of the total plastic waste in Europe. That is highly problematic from a waste management point of view, also from an environmental point of view. We all know about the durability and the resistance to degradation of these plastics. Furthermore, polyethylene and polyethylene terephthalate lead plastic use in food and drink packaging. In this context, UPPET will contribute to dealing with this global problem with innovative solutions. How will UPPET contribute? UPPET will directly contribute to achieve the expected impacts of the topic by upcycling up to 60% of food and drink packaging plastic waste by 2030, establishing a viable roadmap to ensure the production of plastics from renewable sources. Furthermore, it is expected to increase awareness among European citizens of products and materials upcycling capacity. And last but not least, UPPET will contribute to standardization and certification with the aim to facilitate the future replicability and a widest use and to ensure market acceptance. Finally, UPPET will be an important part of the actions for compliance with the European strategy for plastics in terms of circular economy. After this overview of the project, we move on to an introduction to the concept of standardization, and we talk about standardization issues, especially in the framework of European research and innovation projects. Standardization is the process of implementing and developing technical standards based on the consensus and the contribution of the interested parties. Standards are voluntary agreements developed within an open process where all the stakeholders have the opportunity to express their views and also have those views considered. This contributes to fairness, market relevance, and promotes confidence in their use. Finally, standards are voluntary, but highly and widely recognized. The standardization study in the framework of the European research and innovation projects cover both European and international standardization. It is the activity of CEN-CENELEC, ISO, and IEC. In that context, standardization gives us some benefits, like representing a good tool for dissemination of project results, and facilitating the interaction with the market stakeholders. Besides, it approaches the market, facilitating the acceptance and the use of the developed solution. The impact on standardization is wide-ranging. On the one hand, it influences standards with the outcomes of the project, and on the other hand, there is a transference of selected results of the project to standards. We can distinguish two main paths or vias to introduce project results in standards. One is via technical committee. Following this path, the result could be the development of a new standard. This process lasts more than 24 years. Habitually, it is about 3 years. But there is another via workshop that allows us to develop fast-track standards in less than 18 months. These documents are known as CEN-CENELEC Workshop Agreements, or CWAs. And in the next slides, we are going to explain both vias with further detail. We start talking about TC, the TC via. A technical committee is a group responsible for the development and drafting of standards. This contribution can result in the development of a European CEN standard, and this type of documents require full consensus of all the member countries. And in Europe, its adoption is mandatory at national level. In terms of time frames, their elaboration usually takes 3 years. And once they are published, they have to be revised in a maximum of 5 years. As you can see, this is a long-term process that does not always fit well with the timelines of projects such as ours. But there is another via or path that is a simpler way to contribute to standardization. It is via workshop. The result is the development of a CEN-CENELEC Workshop Agreement. In this case, the consensus is easier to achieve because it is limited to the organizations involved. Furthermore, in terms of deadlines, it is also a more agile process because its elaboration can be reduced to 12 or between 12 or 18 months typically. And it can be adapted much better to the deadlines of projects such as UPPET or other research and innovation projects. The adoption of CWAs is voluntary at national level, and once they are published, they must be reviewed at 3 years. Then the participants are asked to make a choice. They can confirm for a maximum of another 3-year period, or they can revise it or withdraw it. And there is also the possibility to upgrade it into a CEN standard or technical specification. In this slide, you can see the most relevant characteristics of both documents. The European standard developed via technical committee, and the CWA developed via workshop. Two of them are of particular importance for us to opt for them in projects such as ours. They are the consensus requirement and the time frame. While in a CEN standard, consensus must be full among the national members, in the case of a CWA, consensus is limited to the registered participants only. And on the other hand, the time of elaboration is too long for CEN standards, while in the case of CWAs, it fits well within the habitual time frame of research and innovation projects. Then we can conclude that CWA is probably the most appropriate formula according to the characteristics of this kind of projects and their schedule. Furthermore, as said before, we should not forget the possibility that there's the possibility that once published, CWAs can be promoted to CEN standards. Now we will focus on the development of these fast-track standards, the process to develop a CWA. We first introduced the concept of CWA. A CWA is defined as a deliverable developed and agreed by the participants of a workshop. It is made available by CEN-CENELEC in at least one of the official languages. It commonly contains guidelines, recommendations, best practice. In any case, it should include innovation outcomes. On the other hand, another element of interest is the workshop. The workshop is the body, which is in charge of developing the CWA. It is defined as the working platform open to the participation of uninterested parties, of any interested parties for elaboration of CWAs. Here you can see some official resources from CEN-CENELEC that could be of interest. The guide 29, where you can find full information. The CEN portal website, and also the CWA download area, where you can find examples of CWAs. The most important steps for initiating and developing a CWA are shown in this figure. Broadly speaking, the process officially starts when the proposal form is submitted. There will be also required a project plan, and after an opening commenting period on draft project plan, the kickoff meeting will mark the start of the actual drafting work, which will finalize with the publication of the CWA. Given that today we have a time limitation, I would like to go briefly through each step, but the complete information can be found in the guideline 29 of CEN. Beforehand, preliminary work must be done within the consortium. It is important the collaboration of the participants to define the scope and a proposed index. It is highly recommended to identify one or more documents already done that can serve as a reference to make the CWA. In this regard, we recommend the use of documents as guidelines, better if the of partners is high, with preference for public documents and a wide potential audience. Also, other aspects as the date for the launching of the workshop and a proposal of action plan should be established. Once we have decided the scope, the documents that will serve as basis, the date for the launching and an action plan, the first official step consists of submitting the proposal form. When a consortium is interested in developing a CWA, a workshop proposer must be designated. Habitually, the partner who has developed the document of reference performs the role of workshop proposer. There is also a workshop secretary that normally is the partner of the project representing a National Association for Standardization. With the support of the secretary, the workshop proposer of a CWA prepares the CEN workshop proposal form. And the proposal form includes, among others, contact information of the proposer and the secretary, the list of persons and organizations that are expected to take part, the scope of the proposed workshop, and a declaration to ensure that there is no conflict with existing standards or within the domain of an existing technical body. Once fulfilled, the secretary submits it to the relevant technical committees for a 30-day consultation. And the objective is to verify that there is neither any active work covering the scope of the proposed workshop, nor any other arguments against the proposed CWA. In addition to the workshop proposal form, project plan must be prepared. It is not necessary to wait until the consultation phase of the proposal form has expired. On the contrary, it is recommended to use that time to work on the draft project plan. The project plan serves to inform the public of the new workshop and is used to conduct a reflection on how to disseminate and involve a wider range of interested parties. In fact, any interested party could participate in this workshop or issue any comment. The project plan includes a schedule with an estimation of the different steps and milestones. After the draft project plan is completed, there is a mandatory open commenting period. The proposal is announced on the website of CEN-CENELEC at least 30 days before the date of the kickoff meeting. And the information posted includes the draft project plan, initial information on the kickoff meeting, including the agenda and the venue, the workshop secretariat and the proposed chairperson, and the way to submit comments to the draft project plan. It is important to note that any comments submitted during this period must be considered during the kickoff meeting at the latest. Now we have completed and submitted both proposal form and project plan, and it has been announced in CEN website for information and to open a commenting period. And once that commenting period expires, the next step is to hold the kickoff meeting. During the kickoff meeting, the workshop secretary gives the participants information about the workshop and the development process of the CWA in order to help them understand how the workshop will operate. Here you can see a typical agenda for the kickoff meeting. As a result of the kickoff meeting, the project plan is accepted, as well as the secretariat and chairperson are confirmed and appointed. It is important to point out that the participation to the kickoff meeting does not automatically ensure registration to the workshop. The participants to the kickoff meeting wishing to continue contributing to the development of the CWA will have to fulfill and submit a registration form to become a workshop participant. As said before, the kickoff meeting marks the beginning of the work on the elaboration of the CWA itself. During the development of the CWA, the participants of the workshop will draft the document according to the final workshop project plan. To ensure transparency, the documents of the workshop should be uploaded and shared on an electronic platform. In this case, the internal regulations of CEN-CENELEC that contain guidelines on how to draft standards can be followed. It is not mandatory, but highly recommended. And the following are some general principles to take into account when drafting a CWA. Text must be plain, clear, and concise. In case a document is used as a basis, new provisions can be added. Note that not all the text have to be transferred. Try to summarize to avoid a large final document. Scope must describe what the document does, the aspects covered, the limits. Regarding terms and definition clause, it is not mandatory but very recommended for a better understanding of the document. Use should, may, can, that mean recommendation or permission. Do not use shall, must, that mean obligation. Do not require to comply with conformity assessments, schemes, and systems, and avoid trademarks, trademark names. It's better to use general designations or descriptions. When the workshop has agreed with the text of the final draft, the process continues with an open commenting period for that is only mandatory when it covers safety aspects. During this period, the draft CWA is posted at CEN website. The duration of this period is minimum 30 days and 60 days in case the CWA deals with safety aspects. And as said before, with some exceptions, it is not mandatory, but it is highly recommended as an exercise of transparency. And last steps, the process comes to an end with the finalization and publication of the document. Once there is an agreement on the final text, it is submitted to CEN. And after an edition process, it is completed with the publication of the CWA itself. Once published, the CWA will be valid for 3 years. And after that 3 years, the participants will be asked to make a choice. They can confirm for another 3-year period, they can revise it or withdraw it. The maximum validity of a CWA is 6 years. After that, there are 2 options: to withdraw it, or there is the possibility to transform it into another deliverable following the normal standard development process. It can be upgraded to a CEN standard, for example, or a technical specification. And finally, in conclusion, we review the concept of CWA. A CWA is a CEN-CENELEC deliverable. It is developed in a temporary working group, a workshop designed to meet an immediate need, including innovation. And there are several reasons to develop a CWA, in special within the framework of research and innovation projects. They can be quickly developed, having the possibility to use already done documents as a basis. they can be converted in CEN standards in the future after their publication. And last but not least, it is an indisputable dissemination tool that gives visibility to the project. With it, we can conclude that the development of a CUA is probably the best formula to contribute to standardization within the framework of research and innovation projects. And thank you very much for your attention. That's all. If you have any questions.
Thank you, Henar. Pablo, are there any questions for Henar's presentation?
Yes, we have a few ones. The first one says, how do you ensure CWAs are inclusive, especially for NGOs involvement?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yes, how do you ensure CWAs are inclusive, especially for NGO involvement?
NGO involvement.
Yeah, NGO, I don't know if it's non-government, I'm not sure.
Governmental organizations, maybe.
Probably non-governmental organization, maybe.
CWAs are developed in workshops, and as said before, once it is proposed to develop a CWA to create a workshop, it is published. It is announced in CEN website, and anyone can participate or submit any comments. So I think it is inclusive for all the parties.
Okay. That's basically all the question we have from.
I think because we are running over, and I know that Christine has to leave at 1 o'clock sharply. I think we will move to Christine's presentation so that we will have time for questions for everyone, if that's okay. Apologize, Christine, for the delay. If you would like to do your presentation.
Yes. I hope we don't have any black squares now. In a moment.
No, everything is fine.
So, okay. Thank you for inviting me to this webinar. And today I'm representing Circular Plastic Alliance, but I'm also heavily engaged in CEN and ISO standardization when it comes to plastic recycling. So it will be entangled as always. So first I will just give a little bit of a visual picture of the complexity of going from linear to circular standardization. It's a challenge, but also going from that to talk about Circular Plastic Alliance and how it's related to standardization and how we are planning to handle the challenges. And last but not least, a conclusion based on all this. So plastics in CEN is covered in several different TCs. CEN and CENELEC is covered in many different TCs. We try to figure out which one are related to this, but many times we find that TCs that we couldn't even imagine in our fantasy was related to plastics turns out to have standards developed within our segment. I'm very much engaged in CEN TC 249. I'm the convener of Work Group 11, Plastic Recycling. I'm an expert in both the Agriculture Working Group and in the Environmental Aspects Working Group in TC 249. And here we definitely see the complexities. On top of that, not only do we have sort of a silo organization within CEN when it comes to the sectorial TCs, we also have challenges globally because plastics is engaging everyone. So we have on ISO level, we have the ISO TC 61, with we tried to calculate this yesterday. I think it's approximately 22 subcommittees and many working groups under that. Then we have, as an example, the ASTM in US, D20, which is a huge group, also developing global standards, but under the name of ASTM. All of these needs to communicate because we cannot overlap. We have a lot of standards to develop and we need to use our resources in a wise way. Here we see that we need to communicate between those. And added to this, we have legislations in various areas in the world. We have environmental organizations, we have the industry, we have organizations like OECD and WTO and the UN Global Plastic Agreement, just to put an example. Everything needs to be taken into consideration when we are doing standardization. So we move fast into Circular Plastic Alliance. It is an outcome from the plastic strategy in Europe and is managed from the European Commission. The DG GROW is leading this project. The aim is to enable an uptake of 10 million tons of recycled plastics until 2025 in plastic products in Europe. It is a voluntary engagement from the industry. And we are a quite big group, more than 310 signatories today, represented by industry, business associations, NGOs, member states, academia, and covering the whole value chain for plastics. The organization in Circular Plastic Alliance, that this is important to keep in mind when we are coming to the complexity, is that it's divided into 4 different thematic groups. They have been working with R&D and investments in order to enable better recyclates and a higher uptake of recyclates, design for recycling of products, collection and sorting of plastic waste, and recycled content. In the middle, we have a steering committee organizing all the different groups, because then on top of that, we have 5 working groups that is sectorial, 1 for packaging, 1 for agriculture, 1 for automotive, 1 for electronics, and 1 for building and construction. And last, we have 1 group that have developed the monitoring system in order to report data. Otherwise, we don't know if we fulfill the 10 million tons. And today we have a huge lack of data in Europe for some material streams. What was very early and identified by the Commission was the identification of the need for standardization to enable these 10 million tons. So as a bridge between CPA and standardization, a standardization request ad hoc group was created and is now at the final stage of a huge standardization request. And how was that handled within CPA? We, in the thematic groups, we got the, especially design for recycling, we got the mission to identify the different parts in the value chain of needed for standards. And here is the scope. We should identify the need for design for recycling in each sector, the need for quality of waste criteria, quality of recyclates criteria, and integration of recycled plastic in products in each sector. What was not in the scope, clearly identified from the Commission, was standardization of recycled content calculation and mass balance. This is because recycled content calculation is developed under regulatory work done in the Commission, and mass balance is under development on ISO level, but also on the Commission level. A lot of things have happened since we started Circular Plastic Alliance in 2019. So, but this is still the case. We have not included this in the standardization request. For the next picture, I need to explain a little bit why were we focusing on specific products, because each sector have been developing design for recycling guidelines for specific products. And this is based on a mass flow model that the Joint Research Center put together for us to identify the biggest potential material flows, both for creating recycled plastics, but also in some cases to take up recycled plastics. So just to show what products we have been working with, and you will get the presentation, so we don't need to go through every one of them, but just to show how many products have we been working with to develop design for recycling guidelines in all the 5 sectors. And then standardization request is normally a tool that is used by the European Commission to enforce standards that will be implemented in legislation in one way or the other and put into the official journal of the European Union as harmonized standards. In our case, this is not the case. The Commission wanted to use a standardization request in order to get the standards developed in an organized way, because there are so many. So that's why the standardization request is used. And right now, the standardization request is at the absolute final stage before approval. And hopefully we will have it launched and accepted by CEN-CENELEC before the end of the first half year of this year. So there were identified a lot of standards, and this picture is also only to visualize in a little bit more in detail. But totally, we will develop 58 standards, 47 new ones, and 11 revised ones. They are distributed over more than I think it is 10 TCs from different sectors. Some will need to be coordinated with sectorial input in CEN TC 249 plastics and workgroup 11, because the need for revision or development of new standards regarding more general criteria like quality of waste have been identified from all the sectors, but is owned under CEN TC 249 and workgroup 11. So this is a challenge, coming back to that. But we have been prepared, we have been very organized, and with a lot of help, both from the Commission and from CMCC, who is managing the CEN-CENELEC organization. We are fairly convinced that we will manage this. So the conclusion is, during this work, we spent 1.5 years in CPA just figuring out and discuss about definitions. What is pre-consumer recycled? And how do you calculate recycled content? Because we need to discuss it even though we don't propose a standard for it. And this needs to be understood by the industry and the legislators, because if we haven't agreed on the definitions, the Single-Use Plastic Directive is a very good example on that. We will get a full stop in the development towards circularity altogether. So definitions is absolutely crucial. And what we are doing now, because now each and every sector is developing their own definitions, we try to communicate between each other so we don't have completely different definitions on the same word, but it's not easy. We also realize that circular plastics is a global change. We cannot do it on our own, not on national level, not on European level, but we need to do it on a global basis, and we need to cooperate between each other as much as possible. So for the ISO group for plastic recycling and the CEN group for plastic recycling, fortunately, I'm the convener of both. So we have a very tight communication between those two groups, so we don't develop the same or similar standards at the same time. These have also created the interest from other areas of the world that want to participate very closely in the work that we are doing in Europe and monitor it, especially from the US. Which is a benefit because we want to make plastic circular globally and not only here. But it's a challenge again because of resources. Do we have the resources to do this? We see a huge problem, and maybe it's especially in CEN because it's most intense work in CEN right now, is that the linear structures that have been established since many years it's really hard to get them to adapt to circularity. It's really hard because the whole system is built to not communicate between TCs, for example, and to have a collaboration between several TCs. The system is not built for that. And how do we handle that when we have a completely empty toolbox, except CEN workshop agreement, which is quite weak in this concept? A CEN workshop agreement cannot be used for a standardization request, for example. How do we get the input from all the different sectors if they don't have an interest in plastics normally? And whatever we do, circularity will happen. With standardization organization adapting and moving with the change, it will be done in a structure and globally through agreement. And this is something we struggle with every day. Some see this as a race, who wins first, instead of talking to each other. So being very, very short today, this was my presentation, and thank you for listening to me. Okay.
Christine, thank you very much. I don't know if we have any questions for Christine before we open the discussion to everyone.
Yes, we have just one. I will read it quickly. So question to Christine: it seems difficult for standardization to adapt to the legislative pace that many times is too fast. Are the standardization bodies or technical committees invited by the policymakers to participate when developing a regulation, and how?
This is very much dependent on what regulation we are talking about, I would say. Well, if we take something that is here and now, the Packaging and Packaging Waste Directive is under revision. And I think it's the fortunate thing that CPA is managed by the Commission, because we have an extreme close communication through DG GROW with DG Enviro in what we are doing in CPA and proposing as standards that is very close to the Packaging and Packaging Waste Directive. So we are aligning here, but that is also a challenge to get the Commission to understand that they need to engage more in standardization instead of seeing it as a hindrance. And the other way around, because the standardization people need also to talk to the Commission. And as being used to working in silos, this is a problem. But we try to manage that also.
Thank you, Christine.
Thank you.
No more questions on the chat. So Angela, if you want to move to the next block.
Yes, so we are in a position now that we can have the open discussion for the importance of standardization in circular economy. Shall I give the floor to Fuensanta to make some remarks on the presentations that we heard today?
Yes, we see that from the presentations that there are a lot of challenges regarding standardization and circular economy, and that it is important, there's a lot of work to do, and it is important the collaboration between parties, and it is essential to participate the different value chain, the different parts of the value chains to participate in workshop and clusters. And I think that the expert can give some conclusions about this topic. So I give the floor to the different experts to give some conclusions, and we are open to your questions to them. The question that you have already sent to Pablo. So
yes, so who would like to start? I'm not sure if Susana is still with us because she had some other commitment today. Will Christina or Christian, Henar, Christine, would you like to make any comments on what we heard today?
I can start, as I need to leave in 10 minutes. My conclusion is that it was very interesting to hear all this presentation, a little bit surprising because a lot of the communication here was new to me. We have been developing, for example, this vocabulary standard in CEN and define things, and suddenly it's upside down because I hear the input coming from this webinar. So what can I say about that? I want to say that we need even more engagement in standardization in order to avoid complete confusion on the market, especially going forward with member states regulating, for example, recycled content. What does it mean, and how can we agree on exactly what is the criteria for different things? What is recycled content? How do you calculate it? How do you classify chemical recycling and so on? So that is my conclusion. It's developing. It's good that development happens, but it's also important to communicate the development to the relevant parties, which is us. Thank you.
Thank you. Christian or Christina, any comments?
Maybe if I may, thanks, Christian. Actually, I can only agree on what you said, especially when we think about the bigger challenges of the circular economy, when we go actually into the real life and making those standards then applicable. Actually, when we think about having the real materials then from the products for recycling, so I can only emphasize that together with you. Maybe one thing that we should not forget about the input, so to say, speaking about the circular economy and standardization and the balancing actually of recycled content and bio-based content. And sometimes this is also an issue, or at least there was some discussion in the past. At least for us at European Bioplastics, we do not see any issue or any problems with that, as either of both sides can fully accomplish the task, and we will both need parts of that because we won't be able to reach the recycled content at the highest rates at the moment, and so therefore we still need also bio-based content to just have the amount of plastics, and therefore we are very keen, of course, on to deliver and to support actually the standardization framework. But I think also like Christina also has shown in her presentation on the different certification schemes that also DINSERTCO is providing, I think there will be possibilities for that one. But maybe also one question also on that part, speaking about the standardization and certification then on that part, if Christina is still there, I was wondering, especially for the new certification scheme, especially for packaging materials, do you already have some rule of thumbs how long this certification takes place? How long it...
What certification are you talking about? This
recyclability? For the new one for the packaging materials that you have just introduced to us, which is only available at the moment in Germany. But yeah, when we are looking therefore on a European level, how much of a time frame for the whole certification do we need to think of it? I'm just thinking also for our projects then also in advance and for the project partners who might be interested.
So for the recyclability, like how long? I'm sorry, is it the certification?
Yeah, sorry. For how long
it takes until we have other countries included?
Yeah, either would be interesting. I'm not sure if we have enough time, but in the beginning, maybe how long the actual certification process does take time.
Okay. Well, it always depends on the complexity of the application that we get. But for plastic products, if it's a typical plastic, and usually we only can certify typical plastic because it's the only plastics that have a recycling stream, takes about, let's say, 4 weeks from application to certification. We take an NIR spectrum to ensure the material they're using are actually the materials they claim to be using, and that the sorting facility would recognize them correctly. So we have a to ensure this. For paper products, for paper packagings, we request an actual recycling test, a paper recycling test. At the moment, we have only one laboratory doing this test, and they have quite a long lead time. So it takes for them 16 weeks to perform the test and until we receive the test report. So this is a quite long lead time, but also until we receive, once we receive those test reports, it takes like 1 or 2 weeks that we have the certificate ready. In advance, prior to those tests, we check the composition and the application form and determine which tests we actually need for the customers. And to include other countries, that's hard to tell. We are working on including Austria, but at the moment, as we just started with the certification, we stick to Germany, and we'll see how it goes, how our certification is getting onto the market, and then follow the requests that we get if we develop the certification for other countries as well.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Do you actually think from your side and as certification bodies, so to say, that with the different initiatives on standardization for the different, especially for the end of life, for recycled content or bio-based content, thinking about initiatives like the product environmental footprint or the product category rules, etc. Do you think that these initiatives from European side will help also to adjust for certification schemes for packaging materials and recycled content?
For sure. And I think it's very needed that there is a common sense for this, because there are many certificates on the market right now for recyclability from different bodies that are more or less into that topic and into certification. It kind of grew because it's up to these dual systems. They are responsible to check the recyclability of products. So they have looked for solutions, and we are working with some of those dual systems, but not all of them. And I think it's really needed to even that out, that there's one certification scheme that is recognized for all dual systems, and for the receive a comparability of those certifications. Right now it's not given. It's most of them have the basis of this minimum standard, but some do more what the minimum standard actually is asking for. Some do less, some do those tests, some don't. So it's not really comparable. And I would not put my hand in that the recyclability quote that we calculate will be the same for other certification schemes right now. So initiatives that push that forward, and I think mostly it should be from the top, from the government, given that there is a common certification for everybody. That would make the most sense for this case. Also, right now it's not mandatory. Those dual systems should control this and should implement some kind of control, but it's up to them to what degree they do this.
Yeah, fully understand. Yeah, thanks for these insights.
Fuensanta wants to make a comment, I can see.
No, I wanted to highlight also how important is this collaboration to decide when a product is recyclable, taking into account the different sorting systems that are in the different countries, as Christina said in her presentation. So this a collaboration between the standardization bodies in the different countries, it is really useful for this, to decide the certification scheme. Yes.
Yeah, I think it would be essential that there is a standard that includes that can be used for several countries, and that includes a method to evaluate the collecting systems, because right now the minimum standard is giving a table for each plastic or each material and says, yes, this is recyclable and this is not recyclable. And I think it could be done a bit more general, so that it could be applicable for other countries as well. There is a European standard, the 13430, I think it is. But this is really old, actually. It's also part of the standard group, which we are using for the biodegradation certification, but it's not really up to date, and it's covering also general packaging requirements that, if you do all those tests, kind of is not really feasible for those applicants anymore, because it's also not all relevant for evaluating the recyclability of those products. Yeah, there's one more question.
Thank you. Fuensanta, did you want to say anything in addition to that? Can see.
Well, we, in the cluster of the three sister project, we are collaborating in this important issue in standardization through workshops and through webinars also. So this is our grain of sand in this issue. And we are also preparing further webinars. You will be all invited to them because we want to cover the different aspect of a systemic solution for circular economy. And this is one of these aspects, standardization, but we have others like policy, you said before, one of the speaker, how to assess the impact of the solutions in the environment, like life cycle assessment. So we have many issues to cover, and we are preparing further webinars to try to reach all of them. So we will keep you informed about these webinars.
That's actually the next slide. But before we move to this one, are there any comments, suggestions, questions for our speakers on that? No. Okay. So this, as Constanza said, this is one of a list of webinars and workshops that the three projects are working together on, trying to find solutions and tackle the challenges that all projects face. We will definitely upload the recording of this webinar on our social media and on our websites. All the presentations will be available through our channels. This is a list of our contact details in terms of our communication. So thank you all for joining us in this very interesting workshop today. And we hope that we will see you in our future workshops. Thank you, especially to all our presenters and speakers for their very insightful presentations and the knowledge that they shared with us today. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Angela, also for all your efforts in the organization.
Thank you. See you soon.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.